Welcome to Business as a Magical Practice, where your business is the vehicle for your self-integration and soul evolution. My name is Sam Garcia, and I'm the founder of Dirty Alchemy Digital Marketing. And I'll be guiding you through how you can use your business as a spiritual practice and what magical businesses are doing to hit their goals and change the world. Together, we'll be relating the mystical to the world of business so that our work can unite spirit and matter, shadow and light, conscious and unconscious. Let's dive in. Hey everyone, today I'm here with a very special guest, Jessica Lanyadoo. Jessica is an internationally respected astrologer and psychic medium with fans and clients across the globe. She has been working to help people help themselves in one-on-one consultations since 1995 and writing her weekly horoscope since 2003. Jessica is the host of the twice weekly astrology and advice show, Ghost of a Podcast. She's the author of Astrology for Real Relationships and created the free app for iOS called Tiny Spark. So welcome to Business as a Magical Practice, Jessica.
Thank you so much. I'm very excited to be here.
Yes. Okay. So first things first, please, you got into the business of astrology in 1995.
Yes. Well, technically 1994, but it was, it was like a tiny, tiny toe in 94. But yeah, I just have never wanted to do anything else. And I just have been doing it the whole damn time.
That's amazing. So your journey of entrepreneurship has been like your entire journey. You've never worked for other people or anything like that?
When I first moved to San Francisco in 94, I worked in retail for a few months. And then I worked in an office, like on the phones for a few years, while I also did astrology, and I also was volunteering with developmentally disabled folks. And then I eventually quit the phone job, worked with developmentally disabled folks for a few years, while also doing the astrology practice, and then was able to finally quit that job and focus full time in at the end of 1999. I went full time as an astrologer and a professional woo.
That's amazing.
Thank you very
Holy
much.
moly. So it's been 20 years.
20, yeah, 25, but 20, well, more than 20, well, 19, it was the end of 99 and we're in 21. So yeah, it's been that long. Those years long.
That is so amazing. And I'm guessing that astrology has helped you with your journey a ton.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. 100%. It is my journey. It's not the only thing I do, but it's a huge part of what I do. Yeah. Personally and professionally.
So I'd love to hear about your different phases of business growth. So you're very well known and respected now, but I'm sure that has come over time. So what does it really look like for you?
It's a great question. I mean, the term entrepreneurship is not one that I exactly identified with until maybe the last 10 years, because in part astrology and all the other things I do were so widely disrespected that it's like I didn't really see myself as kind of like a greater part of the business world or whatever. In the past decade or so, astrology has become a big business, but that's very new, and it is very much associated with technology and social media, and so I'm not sure. First of all, I'm not sure if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
No, it totally makes sense. It totally
Yeah.
does. So you kind of kept it on the down low at the beginning, or what did that
I
look like?
Yeah, I mean, keep in mind in 95 when I started, the internet technically existed, but it's not like people used it to promote themselves.
Mhm.
It's not like people used it the way they did today. People didn't have phones, mobile phones, and when we did, they weren't like, the iPhone really changed the world so much in terms of how we engage with each other and our ability to self-promote. So, you know, a huge portion of my career was around word of mouth, and it was around community building IRL. And so, you know, my grandfather, my mother's father, is a Holocaust survivor. And when he came from, when he's left the camps and came to Canada, where I'm from, he worked in sweatshops, and then eventually he became a tailor and had his own business. And what he described to me as how he like built a business is that created he created his service for his community, and his community supported him back. And then eventually he was able to expand beyond his community and to continue to serve his community, but also, you know, reach out to other communities. And that really was my business strategy. And I think probably still is very much the centerpiece of my business strategy. It's, you know, when I moved to San Francisco, I basically read for, you know, queers, social workers, artists, my community. And
Mm.
and I kept on doing it until eventually those people sent their friends and their coworkers and their family members, and that expanded and expanded. And then kind of throughout time I got more kind of opportunities to write or to get press written about me. And those things expose my work to even more people. And it's kind of grown from there. And so I've had people in the past few years tell me that I've blown up, but from my perspective, doing the same thing for 25 years, it doesn't exactly feel like a blow up. It feels like, it just feels like I'm reaching more people with what I've been doing this whole damn time.
Mm. So I'm assuming you use your knowledge of astrology to support the growth of your business.
Interesting, interesting, interesting. Maybe I do, but honestly, not that strategically. I'm not an electional astrologer.
Mhm.
Electional astrologers will find the best time to do things. I don't do that. I really the primary way that I've organized my business is by checking in with, is this in integrity for me?
Mm.
And you know, following up on opportunities as they emerge. And and my work has changed largely around technology, honestly,
Mm.
or in response to technology and the availability of technology. And this is something that, you know, when younger astrologers or younger psychics ask me how I started, and, you know, kind of like for feedback about that kind of stuff, it's important to remember that I came up in a much different world, like a much
Mm.
different world, a pre uh internety, pre-mobile phone world.
Mhm.
And so the foundation that I laid was very like IRL styles. So I had clients on the phone, but they had to know someone in the Bay Area in order to find out about me. Like there was like a real constellation of people at the foundation of how I've built my business, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and it sounds like a very grounded strategy, whether or not you idea think of it as a strategy, but something that can grow with you through the entire course of your business.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I've always thought really conscientiously about the fact that you know, I knew when I was very young that I wanted to do this work forever. And so
Mm.
when I was raising my fees over the course of time, I was always thinking about not, you know, not charging more than I can grow into. So
Mm.
not charging, you know, there's like a lot of things that go into the consideration of my fees throughout the course of my career, but a big one has been like, you know, I don't want to price myself out of my own communities.
Ah.
Yeah, and it's a big consideration, and it's definitely something that I was able to do partially because I didn't go to university, so I don't have any school debt, and I really didn't have big financial ambitions. And I moved to San Francisco at a time where rents were still really cheap, and I was able to keep a rent controlled apartment for a decade. So
Mm.
I was like, there was like all these things that kind of conspired to support me in pricing myself the way I did, not being in a rush. And again, I also would say my career, like the foundation of my career being built pre social media, made it easier for me to pace myself, because now people compare them, they're always looking sideways, you know, we're always comparing
Yeah.
ourselves to others. That is a new thing. It's a new thing at the level that it occurs at. And I'm so grateful that I didn't have to go through that in the early years, because it would have been really much harder, and I think my career trajectory would be very different.
Is it something that you struggle with now, or you kind of just don't pay attention to it?
I do not consume a great deal of astrology or spiritual content online,
Mm.
actually. So I have, you know, those things a little bit on lock. Like I have my private, my personal spiritual practices. Yeah, they're not really online.
Mhm.
So yeah, so therefore I'm not looking sideways in that way as much as I would otherwise, I think.
Well, now I really want to hear your personal spiritual practices if you're open to sharing those.
I mean, it's like it's a little it's like a little large of an inquiry, right? I have the way that I use astrology is not inherently spiritual. I mean, the way that I consult as an astrologer is inherently spiritual. But when I'm looking at astrology for myself, I am really it's almost like I'm reading a weather report and applying it to my calendar, you know?
Totally.
And I'm strategizing, which is a lot of what I do for my clients, but I'm strategizing. And then in terms of my spiritual work, I am consulting with energy workers, and healers when I'm seeking consultations with other practitioners, not as much astrologers, because I can kind of provide my own astrology for the most part. And yeah, my life is very spiritual, and it's more about the way I live and less about content I consume, if that makes sense.
Totally. And I was
Yeah.
really curious about, like, do you have any daily rituals that you do or weekly rituals that really fill you up?
I have a ton of daily rituals that I do, like a ton. And within those daily rituals, some I will do every day for a period of time, and others I will do sometimes every day and sometimes not. But every single day, I for sure do energy work multiple times a day.
Mm.
And it's always it's like a tricky thing talking about it. I will be honest, because some of it is in my lived experience. Any kind of magic or energy work is best kind of kept in a protected shield. So, kind of like tweeting about it, talking about it in public, sharing details of it doesn't strengthen the work itself. It can kind of take from the work. Um, so I don't. It's not like I'm trying to be secretive or weird about it, although of course it's weird no matter what I do. But I'm not trying to be secretive about it. But it isn't. It isn't. It isn't like I want to keep it secret. It's just that it's not. It doesn't serve me, which means it doesn't serve my work overall for me to like talk about the details of it, if that makes sense. I'm sorry, it's not very satisfying.
No,
But
totally.
yeah,
I'm
and I'm
just
not trying to
like,
sound mysterious,
my
but it
like
is what it
Gemini
is.
rising is like, oh, so I shouldn't be sharing about every like detail of my life. Interesting.
I mean, I know it's one of those tricky things. I mean, and again, I think it's a little bit a cultural thing of like for people who are raised with social media, there's this compulsive self-disclosure that is
Mm.
normative of the culture. And even within like witch and woo culture, there's a lot of like, I am learning about the moon, and this is what I'm learning about the moon. And let me tell you about my journal entry about the moon, or whatever it is. And I wouldn't say there's something wrong about that, unless of course it's wrong for you, but I will say it's not right for me.
Mhm.
And I believe that when it comes to certain levels of emotional developmental practices or spiritual developmental practices, it doesn't even have to be developmental, but practices, I'll just say, they are better served by allowing you to keep things private.
Mm.
And I think that in such a compulsively disclosing or self-disclosing society we live in, there's a like there's confusion between secrecy and privacy.
Mm.
And I don't think it needs to be secret, but I do think that privacy, it's kind of when we create privacy for ourselves, we're creating sacred space.
Mm.
And within that sacred space, we can be fertile, we can be messy, we can kind of gestate our growth and development. And that gestation is really, as a spiritual person, what I want, so that I can bring something into the world that I'm kind of embodied around.
Wow, that was like poetry.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you
Oh,
very
so
much. I
good.
appreciate it. Thank you.
So what stepping out from your totally secret depriving us of your internal life space. No.
No, I like that a lot. Yes, that's exactly it. Yes. Uh-huh. Totally. Yes.
What projects are you really excited about working on right now?
Oh, so many. So I'm building an app right now for astrologers and astrology students that I'm
Oh.
very, very excited about. Yeah, it's hopefully will be launching. It's like one of these things where I was like, oh, we'll launch in February because we couldn't make it for January. And then I was like, fucking Mercury retrograde. So we're not launching during Mercury retrograde because that would be really bad astrology. But so it'll probably be, at the end of February, the start of March. But of 2021. But it is a tool for astrology students and astrologers to track the transits and to cultivate. So, for students and pros, to cultivate kind of like your own delineations of the transits themselves. So, I'm very excited about it. I've basically built a tool that I want to use and that I want astrology students to use, where basically I'm encouraging independent thought and self directed study. I'm really excited about it. Yeah, but it's not like CoStar or anything like that. It's not that kind of product. So it's not for people who are more astrology fans, which is
Mhm.
probably the bulk of people.
Yeah. So what was the decision behind going with an app versus like a course or a book,
Mm.
or like why an app? Because this is gonna be your
And
second app.
yeah, it's going to be my second app. So, a couple things. One is I wanted this app. I just wanted to use the app and the app didn't exist. So, boom.
Mm.
I was kind of like filling a hole in. There was something kind of similar that was around for many years, and the guy who made it was just like, I'm old, I don't want to do this shit anymore. And so I was like, no, what shall I do? And then I started talking to my partner who's an engineer, and we decided to build it. At first the conversation was like he would build me some like bare bones version of it. And then we started talking about it and being like, other people could use it. And then I realized I could make, add functions to this app that would make it what I want astrology students to have. So I basically just see it as a learning tool where I don't have to create curriculum because I love sharing information in a way that is useful, but I don't really think of myself as much of a teacher. I think of myself more as a counselor or a coach. So this is kind of like, here, I'm coaching you through by giving you a tool that you have to use on your own. I don't like to, yeah, I'm not super enthused about creating curriculum,
Mm.
which is annoying to people because they want my curriculum. but I'm not great at it. It's just I hate writing. Like I detest writing. I do a
Mm.
lot of it. I wrote a book, came out at the start of 2020, but I don't enjoy writing. So there's that, you know,
You
trying
do
to
a
figure out.
lot, yeah, you do a lot of writing for someone who doesn't like
I
writing.
do a great deal of writing and I do not enjoy writing at all. And it's like when you're self-employed, there's this idea that people have at the beginning of self-employment or before they're self-employed that you just get to do as you want. And
Mm.
that's ridiculous. It's not at all the case. I think being your own boss means that you have greater control over the choices you make.
Mm.
But ultimately, running a business means also responding to client like a customer demand,
Yeah.
right? And I think if I stopped writing my weekly horoscope, it would it would not be a service to the world. Like I think my horoscope is a service to the world, and so I would I would be shorting myself. I would be shorting others. So I just keep on doing it
Mm.
week after week after week.
I've heard someone describe the the art of selling when you're selling yourself as this interplay between being the slave and being the artist, of like the artist who doesn't care and is just like expressing from their soul, and the slave who will just completely fulfill the wants and desires of the people. And I feel like it's so
Interesting,
true.
interesting. I'll say this. I'll say this. I don't know if I exactly resonate with that, but I will say that I'm I'm a big like cost benefit analysis kind of person. And when I think about the benefit of freeing up my time and energy and not writing my weekly horoscope, it isn't greater than the cost.
Mm.
And that said, for many years, I mean, I used to write like 4 or 5 columns. And
Wow.
yes, up until last year actually. And I did it for many years. And it wasn't worth it anymore. At a certain point, it wasn't worth it to me because I realized I wasn't trying to build and expand a writing career. So what was I doing? And yeah, I really just don't enjoy writing. So at a certain point, I was like, okay, so the cost of doing all this writing isn't, it's not, it's greater than the benefit I am receiving. Maybe it wasn't greater than the benefit I was giving. I don't know. But I made that call. So I don't I really try to align with my agency. So I think that's a huge part of being self-employed. I was actually just talking about this with a friend who's just in their second year of being self-employed the other day. This thing of, if you're going to be your own boss, it's your responsibility to be a good boss, you know? And
Totally.
so that's recognizing that you have choice. You might, not have great choices, you might not like your choices, but you do have choices. So that's an important, for me, part of being healthy with self-employment. It's a journey.
Totally, especially when you're a solopreneur, it's realizing that you have these different roles within yourself. Like you are the employee who's actually doing the work. You are
Yes.
the manager. Are you going to be the best manager or an asshole manager?
Yep.
And then you have the
That's right.
CEO. Are you going to like actually step into that role and hold the vision and doing all of it?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. It's absolutely right. So it's a tricky thing, but I think it's an important one to always be in conversation with oneself about,
Mm.
especially when you start to feel like you're trapped or you're, you don't have agency. That's when I think you're being a bad boss to yourself.
Mhm.
And there's room for a lot of people's careers. There's room for pivoting when it comes to that.
Do you
But
think
again, it
health?
depends on your finances and your financial goals.
Yeah. Do you think that we're moving into a time where more and more people are going to be self-employed?
It's a great question. I think more and more people want to be self-employed. Um, and I think that's great. But I also see, as an astrologer and also a person who consumes news, that the economy is in a deeply destabilized place.
Mhm.
And self-employment is a risk, and if you don't have class privilege and a safety net to fall back on, it's a serious risk, and I'm really grateful that I very slowly over the course of many, many years built up my career, and I'm really glad that I have didn't really have any financial goals for myself for at least the first 15 years of my career. So I didn't have those kinds of pressures, because I do see a lot of people today and they're like, oh, I have a kid, or, like
Mhm.
rents are insane and
Yeah.
school debt is insane. Like all of these things exist. And if you have financial burdens, or if you're really financially ambitious, self-employment is a bigger risk than it is if you're kind of like I was, like a scrappy kid who was just like, I don't give a fuck. I just want to do what I want to do. So, I think that it's tricky because the economy is in a really rough place. And I don't see it getting magically better in 2021 for, a variety of reasons, including but not limited to COVID-19 is clearly not going anywhere.
Hmm. I don't know if I agree with you.
Oh, great.
I think that self-employment is significant. You have so much more agency than being employed by someone else, because you could be there is no safety net in being employed with someone else, where you can 100% control everything with self-employment, where you can just be fired with an economic downturn when you're employed by someone else.
Yeah, that's true. But in order to be gainfully self-employed, you need to have people paying you. So you need to have it's a tricky thing, right? Because if you have an employer as reliable as it is, and it is deeply unreliable, and I haven't had an employer in many, many years, so obviously I have an opinion about it. But you also will often have medical insurance, and you will be guaranteed a paycheck, right? Whereas when you're self-employed, there are no guarantees about your income. You
Mhm.
have to pay for your own medical insurance, and for a lot of people, they don't make that, they can't make that work, or it takes time to make it work and they don't have the time.
Mhm.
And for other people, again, if you're starting with savings, or if you have somebody who's backing you financially, like a partner or a family member, then it's less of a risk. It just depends on, I think I just hear so many people saying, I want to be a tarot reader professionally? Should I quit my job? And I always think, now in this economy, I don't know. That sounds bonkers, but this is where, like as a general rule, I am aware that my if I'm doing an individual reading for someone, I can absolutely like get into the answer to that question. But if I'm looking at it from a more broad strokes place, I'm as a middle-aged person, not as aware of like the potential for, masses of people to make a living as a tarot reader. Because for me, I'm still like, well, that's obscure. How are you going to make that work? It takes time, but I don't know that it actually does anymore. I think there's a lot more people who are willing to pay for esoteric services than there used to be. And that's where I'm aware that I'm not really aware. Does that make sense?
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, and I kind of, I've never been employed by, like, I've never been an employee. I didn't have the mental capacity to work a 9 to 5 job. Like, I just wouldn't have been possible. But I also, I cut my expenses down to pretty much nothing. I lived in I grew up in Michigan, and I was living in Michigan when I started, and there wasn't much overhead. So I totally
Yeah.
hear what you're saying. It's just
Yeah.
like looking back 10 years now, it's like, oh, it's there is an endless ceiling in terms of what you can get paid when you own a business versus
Yeah.
when you
Yeah.
are an employee.
It just depends on whether or not you have enough time
Yeah.
to not make any money. And
Yeah.
for some people, that's about their preference to make a lot of money. And for other people, it's about basic survival, right? And so, we may have had different experiences or in, different conditions or the same ones, but for sure, there's some people who just cannot afford to not make a substantive living straight out the gate. And for those people, I'm always a little more concerned because when you're self-employed, you've got to become accustomed to and comfortable with the financial instability
Yeah.
of not being able to command a consistent income. Now, I say that I've been self-employed for 25 years. I have a consistent income. I have a pretty solid sense of, a bucket of how much I'm making every month, but that took me a very long time to achieve. And again, some of that is because I started doing this work before it was like fashionable. And some of that is because it simply takes a long time for most people, not for everyone, but certainly for most people.
Hmm.
IMO, I mean, everybody's got their own take and their own, experience.
So, kind of in this same topic, I listened to your episode on disaster preparedness the other day, and actually moved to Hawaii because of this reason. It was like right after 2012, and I was like, the world's gonna fall to shit, and I don't trust anything, and ended up here. So it was really fun to hear of how much you've prepared for it, and it's been like it sounds like it's been a key piece to decisions you've made over the years.
Yeah. You mean disaster preparedness in general or
Yeah.
just, yeah, sure. Yes, I would. I mean, I've seen a show called Preppers or Doomsday Preppers. I'm not like that in any way, shape, or form. I'm not interested in the bunker or whatever. That's a lie. I would love a bunker. Who am I kidding? I would
You would love it. You
love
just
a
can't where you
bunker.
live.
I know. I would never do it here. It's true. But when I think about the next few years, and where I want to, because I'm closer to 50 than not, and where I want to set myself up so that I can kind of grow old. Um, I absolutely am thinking in terms of climate change. That is the centerpiece of my process is climate change. And I am not going to stay on the West Coast because of climate change
I was gonna
specific.
ask, like,
Yeah.
LA seems like the worst place to be.
Yeah, I would not live in Southern California for sure. But it's not just that, in 2020 in the Bay Area where I live, the fires were so awful. They were so awful. And, we spent not just with COVID being indoors, but having to not have a window open or not go into the backyard or take a walk because the air quality was so abysmal. And, I'm from Canada, I'm dual citizen. And so I could go up to British Columbia, but they also have fires on the West Coast.
Wow.
So, the, I try to stay as educated as I can, understanding the impact of climate change is still speculative, right? But the West Coast is really susceptible to fires and drought and earthquakes. And as I think about being an older person who may have, mobility issues at some time, as older people do. I don't see that those are the risks I want to take on. And so when I think about it, I think about, you know, if I'm thinking about moving to a place that is prone to floods, okay, so I'm going to look at trying to get a place to live that's on higher ground. Like I do think that way, absolutely. And um, I have a perspective that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Mhm.
And I'm really interested in not obsessing on what could go wrong, but thinking if these things are likely to go wrong, what could I put in place to be safe, and to take care of myself and my loved ones. So that's kind of my thinking around that. Yeah. Being in Hawaii for that missile scare, you were there, eh?
I actually wasn't here at that time. Like I was off island. But like
Oh,
my
okay. So you're
friends
like
were
out
like
of
texted
town.
me later in the day. We're like, "Oh my gosh." I was
It
like,
was
"Oh
scary.
my gosh."
And what it really revealed is that there's no plan,
Yeah.
that like, living in Hawaii, I mean, I'm sure it would be true anywhere else, but certainly Hawaii is like isolated for
Yeah.
better and for worse. And there were no protections. There was no central governmental response.
Mhm.
And this was pre-Trump, right? So, right, was it? No, it was during Trump.
Are you
I don't
sure? I
remember.
think it
I
was
don't
pre-Trump.
remember. I think it
I
was
think it was pre-Trump.
pre-Trump.
And just for people listening, in case you don't know what we're talking about, because why would you? Pretty much the everyone who was in Hawaii at this certain time received a text message saying like alert, there's a missile coming towards Hawaii, like good luck. I mean, except
Yeah. Yeah,
governmentally.
that's
But
exactly what it was. It was like everybody's phone got this alert, and it was early in the morning too. And so it was a really frightening experience, it was really, really frightening. And it was what I really saw on social media, because that's where I got the most news, because it
yeah.
wasn't being covered in the news. It was like all on Twitter. People were like, I can't get any information anywhere.
Yeah.
It was really quite intense. It was during Trump years, actually. I think it was in
Was it?
2018. Yeah. Um, so for me, I had already, I had tools in place. It wouldn't have helped me in a nuclear event, I
Yeah.
don't think. But I had tools in place. So yeah, I do think in those terms. And I think, there's a lot of reasons why I do, but as a self-employed person, there's like a connection to this of if you're responsible for you, then what do you got to do to protect future you so that you can continue to be responsible for you? And if
Mhm.
you're responsible for clients, how can you center self-care in such a way that you can uh, be consistent in your offerings to your clients, right? These are kind of questions that I always return to.
Mm. That's good. Yeah, my husband, he's been living off grid for like 35 plus years, and
Wow.
so the whole like preparedness thing is a huge part of like just his cellular DNA. And we've had a lot of conversations around like how do we prepare for every potential future, including the future that nothing bad happens at all.
Right,
And
right.
everything continues as it is versus like because okay, yes, like invest in the land and in owning land and invest in the resources and having the natural resources that can support you and the food and the whatnot, but also like save for retirement. Like what if Roth IRAs continue and there isn't like this huge EMF blast that takes down all of everything?
That's a really important question. And of course, my triple Capricorn mind is like, yeah, that's not going to happen. I mean, climate change is climate change is climate change. And the predictions are, I think, very reliable. I mean, listen, they're speculative, but what's not speculative is that the fires that we saw, that
Yeah.
all of the natural disasters that we are seeing are the beginning of an increasingly dynamic problem, right? And when we think about even like the refugee crisis that we see around the world, it's in part about the scarcity of natural resources
Yeah.
and the kind of like as resources become more scarce, there's more violence, there's
Mhm.
more hoarding, and then all kinds of other civil unrest occurs. And I think, and I mean, don't get me started. I know this is slightly off topic, but
No,
I
I
do
love
think in
this
the
topic.
US,
Keep going.
people have this idea. Okay, good, because so do I. So do I. I think people in the US have this idea that like it can't ever happen here. Bad things happen to people, in the Middle East, in Africa, in South America, but never here. And that hubris will be our undoing because we are such a consuming culture. We consume, consume, consume. And, there's simply there's a lot of uh very real, very imminent ecological problems that we have.
Yeah.
And we are not established for most people to live off the land,
Yeah.
to know the difference between a poisonous herb and one we can consume or whatever it is. And not to be, spreading fear. It's not about that, but it is about, again, I really am focused on action and consequence. And so when we look at our actions as human beings and the way we treat the earth, there's a clear set of consequences that are occurring, and they're coming at us like a train, like
Yeah.
just really consistently barreling towards us. And we keep on saying, hopefully not. But for sure is my thought. For sure. It's just how much, when, what's it look like? But it's going to happen in my lifetime, and I'm 46. So it's probably going to happen to anyone else's that lifetime who's younger than me.
I'm shocked that you're 46. You do not look 46.
Thank you, girl. I appreciate it. Well, that's part of how I started my business I was very young when I started it, but that's part of why I was able to start it in 94 because because I'm old. I'm old.
Perfect. Well, whew. I don't know. I really selfishly am like, okay, good. Thank God I'm already in Hawaii and we already have like all of the resources in place to deal with this. But I know that's not helpful for anyone but me.
Yeah, it's probably true. Probably true. Yep. Unless, of course, you have resources to share and to spare, and that's my hope, is that more and more of us are thinking about like having surplus, not so we can, be okay alone in a bunker for longer, but instead for those of us who can have extra, so that we can share it with our neighbors and share it with our community, because that does serve everyone, and it's the way we survive climate change with our humanity intact. Not to get too serious, but that is really how I feel about it. And I think that, that applies to the economy. Even it applies to like that same logic for me applies to many different areas. Yeah. So I know we're off topic, but we did it.
Well, like maybe this is significantly more important than talking about business, but hey.
Well, I think it is. I think it's related, because the reality of the situation is that you have to have a plan, right? For all of these things. And then
Yeah.
also, I think how we kind of got into this topic is talking about economic instability at this
Yeah.
time and self-employment in general. And the reality is, if people are facing evictions, if people can't get jobs because of, COVID and everything, and because capitalism is really fucked and complicated, who's going to pay for your services?
Yeah.
That's the question, and are we, when we look at something like, rideshare services, where these major companies make tons and tons of money off of these, independent contractors that make money that they need, but it's not enough money and there's no employee protections. Like, are we going to see more and more of that? Are we going to see, less unions and protections for workers? These are really serious questions. And if we're all kind of pointing ourselves towards self-employment, we still have to care about that stuff, I think. So again, it's all very, it's like I'm bringing a lot of complexity to a conversation, which is maybe not necessary, but I can't help but think about these things.
So,
Yeah.
what is your relationship with capitalism, and how do you lead your team differently than big corporations?
I don't have a team, so I should start with that.
Mhm.
I don't have a team, but my values are very anti-capitalist, and I am also very materialistic. I am a triple Capricorn. I love things. I like security, but I'm not capitalistic in my drive and in my values. And I think it is possible to operate within capitalism, within, without, because I'm not living off the grid. That's not an imminent ambition for me. But I do think it is possible to function within capitalism with integrity and in a way that essentially it's like when I hire someone, I pay them well, I pay them on time. I try to the best of my ability as frequently as possible to, I can't claim to do this all the time, to not affiliate with companies that are doing harm in the world.
Mm.
So, I try to spend with integrity, like that kind of stuff. But when you're in a capitalistic society, you're in capitalism. There's no way out of it completely. It's about really being conscious of my participation in it. And within that, something that I really am enjoying right now is something like Patreon, also my podcast, where, Patreon is an affordable service for the people who like pay into it,
Mhm.
and then it pays me in a way that feels really great. So it's very little expense to the consumer, but it like pays me in a substantive way. Something like my podcast is free to the consumer and they just have to listen to a couple ads, right? So there's like these things to me are ways of working kind of within capitalism without constantly defraying the cost to the consumer.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, although I'm happy to defray the cost to the consumer when it's a one-on-one reading for
Yeah.
sure, because that's a different kind of a thing. But yeah, so those are ways I think about it. For me, I like vintage a great deal. I am very happy to buy things vintage. I'm very happy to think about where my money is going and where it's being supported. And within that, as a self-employed person, I have a SEP IRA, and everyone knows what that is, right? A self-employed IRA. And I am invested in green bonds and like stocks and whatever. Like I try to, whenever I have any amount of money to spend, I like to spend it with intention. And so sometimes I don't. I spend my money where it's not doing any good in the world, but I try to bring that into my thinking and do my best around that kind of thing.
So, what have been your favorite recent purchases for your business and for your pleasure?
Interesting, interesting. Okay, my most recent purchases for pleasure. Okay, I can't remember what it's called, although it's like in the room with me, so I could like get up and look at the like branding on it. But I got myself. It's this like it was like $40 or something, but it's a full spectrum light. So it's for, you would never need this in Hawaii, but it's like gives you like the vitamin D, like the good vibes when you're living in like
Oh.
darkness.
Uh-huh.
I forget what they're called, but do you know what SAD is? The
Yeah.
SAD?
Uh,
Yeah. So you're from Michigan, so you would know, right?
oh yeah,
So
seasonal affective disorder,
that's
something like
exactly
that.
right.
Yeah.
Seasonal affective disorder. So there used to be something called SAD boxes, which is like you would like close your eyes, you put your face, you
Oh,
focus on it, and you like just like let the sun touch you, vitamin D,
uh-huh.
and that's what these lights are, and it's amazing. It's like first thing in the morning. I leave it on for a couple hours, and it really does
Does it just look
energize.
like a light
Yeah,
in your room?
yeah, yeah. It's
Oh.
just like a plug in lamps essentially, and it's like very like it's like kind of not a lot to look at, but when you turn it on, you're like, holy shit, this is sunshine. It's
Oh,
amazing. It's
wow.
so amazing. So that's something new that I've bought recently. Thrifting is very hard on the intranet,
Yeah.
IMO. So COVID has really shut that down for me. But then in terms of what I've invested in for my business, honestly, I could also say the light I invested in for my business because when
Yeah.
I feel better, my
Yeah.
work is better.
Yeah.
But you know, right now building this app is like, I don't building apps, if anyone is curious about building an app, it's insanely expensive.
Yeah,
Um
that's what I thought. That's why I was so curious about your decision to go there.
it's wildly expensive. It's shockingly expensive. And this is what I've learned. It's because my partner, my fiance, and I shall not marry, but he is my fiance. Um, my partner he is also my partner with work stuff. So he edits my podcast and, we work on the podcast together. And then he
Oh.
also built Tiny Spark, my app for iOS, and he's building this. So if I was paying him out of pocket, there's no way in a million years that I could afford this. Like I would have to, get capital and investors and stuff like that. And I don't think investors would invest in a product that's for nerds. Like, it's not for the masses, the astrology apps that are really popular. You don't need to know anything in order to use them. You know what I mean? Like, you can come in without any previous knowledge, whereas this is absolutely for nerds. You know what I mean? And I love nerds. Nerds are my people. So there's that. But yes, so we own this together, and he's not charging for it. He's not like, I'm not paying out of pocket for it. I couldn't if he was. I couldn't build this.
So, do you have a name for it? Is the name announced yet?
I don't know if it's announced, but I'll announce it now. It's called Astrology for Days.
Oh,
yeah.
I love
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Astrology for Days is what it's called, and it is something that I deeply love, and I'm really, really excited about it. I cannot wait. But it's the thing that's really annoying about coding something from scratch is, as a basic bitch, I know very little about technology, and everything I know is drag and drop. But when you're coding something, you can drag nothing and drop nothing. Every small thing takes so much time, especially when you don't have a big team, so it's really slow. We've been working on this for like a year.
Wow.
Not full time for a year. If it was full time, that would be different, but who can afford that? Not us. So yeah, I had these ideas about Tiny Spark, that we would charge for the app, or we would have ads on the app, because that makes sense, right? You build something, you charge money for it, you make money off of it. But then I put it out there, and I was like, but it's so pretty like it is, and it's such a nice gift to give to the world. I'm terrible at this stuff, because I didn't want to junk it up. So it's been out for, I think, a couple years now, and we just let it live its life. Yeah. Terrible business. Don't follow my footsteps.
Well, you do have a leg up with I don't know how you pay your partner, maybe in kisses or dinners.
Yeah. I know, I never cook. He does all the cooking. So, I wouldn't say that he gets paid. I would say that he luckily we have similar similar values, and he likes building. I mean, this is a really great thing, and it's also a shame, because we're both kind of like, let's build it because it's fun. Let's build it because it should be in the world. And then we both just looked at each other like, wait, what are we supposed to do with this now that it's built? We have no plan, no ambitions, like nothing. It would be great to get paid, Avi, but we're really, I mean, he's much worse than me. So yeah, I mean, we're such dummies about this, but yeah, we built an app, took a lot of time and effort, and then made $0.00 on it. Do not learn from me.
We're learning from you. Sorry.
Okay. Learning what not to do with Jessica Lanyadoo. Yes, that's the name of my new show. Yes. Yeah.
That'll be the title now.
Yes, that's the new title. It's my new title. I'm running with it. Yeah.
So this podcast is called Business is a Magical Practice, where we don't only use our magical and spiritual practices to boost our business, but we also use our business as a tool for soul evolution. Can you tell us how you use your business for your own spiritual development?
Yeah, I mean, this kind of comes back to, I think, the first question you asked me about entrepreneurship. I don't experience a great deal of separation between me and my business, because I do what I do because I love doing it, because it's what I feel called to do. I've always felt called to the work I do, and I've organized a way to make a living off of it. And I believe that part of the exchange of money for service is actually a values-based exchange. And so I'm here for it. But I honestly, it's funny. I don't think of myself as being a service-oriented person, but it's become really clear to me that I am. It's my primary motive is service. I really do like helping, and I also want to, eat organic food as frequently as possible, and buy products that are good for the world when I'm cleaning my kitchen or whatever. So I want money for those things so that I can do those things. So I don't think I have a great answer, but basically I don't see a great deal of separation between who I am as a person, as a spiritual person, and what I do in public. you know, which again doesn't mean I don't have privacy. I really like to protect my privacy, but
We've already determined that you
we
are purposely depriving us of
yes,
said thing.
that's right. That's right. My privacy is depriving privacy. That's my primary ambition, is depriving privacies. Exactly. Exactly. But yeah, I definitely, I don't see a great separation. And as I try to, like, when I am thinking about how to, like, for instance, advertise or market, um, Astrology for Days, my fourth coming up, I am seeking help from people who are better at this kind of thing than me, because left to my own devices, I'll just be like, oh, it's beautiful. I love it. Then I move along with my life and keep on using the app and hope that somebody hears about it one day, So I'm trying to seek help because, we've worked so hard on this, and I think this tool is so valuable. I want people to know about it. Um, but I'm not naturally good at this, and I'm learning that, and this is something that's very important. I think I'm learning for myself something I've seen my clients struggle with for so many years, which is, at a certain point with self-employment, if you try to do it all on your own, you're going to limit yourself,
Yeah.
because we need to collaborate with people who can, help, and who have their own skills and all that kind of stuff. So I'm trying to figure that out right now.
How exciting.
Yeah, it is exciting / annoying / exciting.
You just have to think of your marketing and your sales as this additional work of art that you get to create.
Yeah. More realistically, TBH, I'm going to try to hire somebody who thinks that way, because what I'm starting to recognize is that there's certain things that and I think that this is a valuable thing to consider as a self-employed person, is that there's certain things that I could learn, but it would take so much time and energy. It's not cost effective anymore, And so this is where I'm really, it's like very much a conversation I'm having with myself right now, is around marketing specifically, actually. So it's great that we're having this conversation in this moment, because I don't want to market myself, but I'm really excited to hire somebody who wants to market me in a way that's in alignment with my integrity, and for me to learn from them, and, not try to do something that I don't want to do so deeply.
Yeah.
And I think that it's okay, I think this is part of where I think about self-employment in a really expansive and wonderful way, because I don't think about hiring a big firm. I think about hiring a person that I can build a relationship with. And that's just again, it kind of fits into my larger values around, how to spend my money.
How exciting. Love it.
Yeah, hopefully, fingers crossed.
Well, in respect to your time, let everyone know where they can find you on the internet, or at bookstores, or in their app store.
Oh, damn. Okay, cool. So, Astrology for Days, when it drops, sign up to my mailing list at lovelanyadoo.com. That's on my website, to be alerted to when Astrology for Days drops. It is going to be a web-based app, which means you're not going to get it. I mean, you could get it in the App Store, but it means that all you need is internet. So if you're an Android user, you will not want to write me hate mail, which I got a lot of that when I did Tiny Spark, because it's whatever, I only dropped it for iOS. So you can find Tiny Spark in the App Store for if you're an iOS user, aka you have an Apple phone. And you can buy my book, Astrology for Real Relationships, Understanding You, Me, and How We All Get Along. You can listen to my podcast, Ghost of a Podcast. You can read my weekly horoscope. Join me over on Patreon, where I do hella extra stuff. And I think there's probably other things, but isn't that enough, Jessica? I feel like that might be enough for the people.
I was stalking your website, and it looks like you aren't currently open to doing one-on-one consultations.
Correct. I stopped that. Yes.
Okay, so
for now,
you can't do that.
Correct. And do not ask, because the answer shall be no. So yeah, that's not happening right now.
Well, thank you so much, Jessica. This was so fun, and I really appreciate the perspective you brought here, and your extreme level of experience, and I just really appreciate you and what you're doing, and giving me your time today.
It's been such a pleasure, and I hope you enjoy the gorgeousness of Hawaii. And yeah, I'm really, really thrilled to have this conversation. So thank you.
Thank you.